sciences and the social. And he said, one of the objections is that there's a charge on the electron. There's mathematical constants in nature, but there's nothing really analogous to that when it comes to human action. And that's one of the reasons Mises thought that was not a good idea to try to mirror what the natural scientists were doing.
Uh-huh. I myself would generally concur with the reservations about purported mathematical attempts to resolve issues by what in truth are rather abstract formulas for different phenomena. Never in any case do I find that those formulas trace down to even the nature of money, the disposition of money, the natural processes which occur in the wake of the disposition or obfuscation of money, whichever the case may be. So I myself, I find them totally unqualified. There is no actual proof that any of these theories apply in all instances and possible cases. And I also, as a mathematician, I understand a reservation toward mathematic applications. Generally, as you probably well know, there's two branches of math, and the one being conventional math, which actually accounts for things as they transpire. And then there's another branch which we generally call numeric methods, which are often applied to issues which we may not even have a fundamental understanding of. In other words, modern ballistics is an example of the latter numeric methods, in that we don't actually calculate how a projectile will decelerate. We actually measure the patterns by which it does, and can very accurately calculate trajectory then by generally a combination of velocity specific formulas which merely replicate the measured pattern and interpolate for interior data and extrapolate for exterior data beyond the known ranges. And generally, what's a valid complaint about numeric methods is that they don't account for exceptions because they aren't based upon an actual understanding of the phenomena that are involved, so that we're actually explicitly calculating and accounting for those things. So I tend to agree in the inappropriate application of mathematics. But an area that is of great concern to me is the consequence of interest. And in general, in confronting any Austrian economists, of course, I'm aware that they have a positive disposition for interest, and generally they will answer that they find nothing wrong with interest, with this idea, of course, being predicated on a fact that we borrow money from banks, risk is involved, and this ostensibly justifies interest. So generally, what I've found, I've researched Austrian economics back to the, Bombay work, for instance. He spends about 5 chapters of one of his books basically developing an argument that the only opposition to interest or usury which has ever existed derives from nothing more than religious sentimentality. But I'm wondering if you could answer then, is it a general precept or principle generally adopted in some way or another that interest is favorable and necessary to an economy? And I'm wondering if you could give us an idea of what the background for that idea would be.
Sure. So let me just, before I forget to mention this caveat, let me say that most modern Austrians are not in favor of our current financial system where the big banks are getting bailed out by either the Federal Reserve or the government. So
Uh-huh.
this shouldn't be construed as an endorsement of the system we've seen in the last few years in practice. But
Right.
but but theoretically, yes, Austrians do think that interest is an important market phenomenon. Ultimately, they think it's due to time preference, meaning that present goods are more valuable than future goods. And so they think that's ultimately what interest reflects. That the reason, it makes sense if I lend someone $100 to get 105 back next year is that ultimately I'm deferring possible present gratification for a year, and so in other words, it's making me whole. It's not in a very legitimate sense. It's not that I'm actually getting back more. It's that at the time when I gave the 100 up, I was giving up whatever 100 apples. And at that moment, if you said to me, how many future apples would you need to keep you, happy about this, that it would need to be more than 100. So that I think that's what interest is ultimately reflecting, is that for whatever reason, people do seem to prefer to consume sooner rather than later.
Right. I get this time thing thrown at me regularly by Austrians. So, although I don't think anybody's articulated it any better than you just did, I find it not necessarily relevant at all to the nature of our currency, which is really where I'm heading with this, because evidently Austrians are also advocates of banking, but not necessarily this bailing out of banks, as you've just said. But they are advocates of banking. Would you not say?
Right? Yeah. If it arose in a free market and people, the bankers were held to their contracts, then yeah, Austrians think that's an important function.
All right. What would be cloudy to me from this much of our discussion would be what's the distinguishing characteristic between bailing out the banks in the present system, according to the Austrian perspective at least, as opposed to purported banks existing in a purported free market somehow different. I mean, what would be the latter? What's wrong with the former in according to the Austrian perspective?
Okay, well, here I need to make a distinction because there is pretty heated disagreement, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm speaking for all Austrians.
Uh-huh.
Some of them go the line that Murray Rothbard laid down of 100% reserve banking, whereas a different school of thought, they're still Austrians, call themselves the free bankers, and they think that fractional reserve banking is okay as long as it's within a market. So the Rothbardian line is to say that if you have a checking account balance or a demand deposit more generally, then the bank is supposed to just be a warehouse. And so they're supposed to just store your money for you for convenience so you can write checks on it. And then if the bank lends it out to somebody else, well, they're basically engaging in fraud. And that if there's a run on the bank, the government shouldn't be coming in and giving them a bank holiday, that bank should go out of business, and it serves them right for trying to lend out their customers' property. So that's the pretty hardline Rothbardian view. So there could still be a role for banks as financial intermediaries, but he thinks you would have to buy a CD, for example, so you're clearly lending your money to the bank, and then the bank's lending it out, and you wouldn't be walking around writing checks on that because that's not your money right now. You're holding the CD. So that's the way Rothbard viewed it, and he thought central banking and FDIC and all that were just government interventions to try to relieve bankers of the consequences of them basically lending out their customers' money.
I'm going to break into this discussion here to emphasize what Mr. Murphy has just said. Our differences so far are the von Mises idea that no natural processes exist in economics, whereas in fact I would say in certainly even, that the issue that's just been raised in regard of Rothbard's position on banking relates, in fact, to a resolution of a natural relationship. And this is the thing that I've been trying to get everybody on the same page over for 43 years. In other words, what we note in this discussion so far, and forthwith as well, is that there isn't any discussion here, nor do I find one, in the entirety of Austrian economics as I've exposed myself to it in research. I don't find any exposition of the process of creating money and a purported bank's rightful role therein. So I find it very interesting that Rothbard's position is expressed well by Mr. Murphy. Bob has said that, Rothbard's concept, basically, in the behavior that he's stating as improper or unnatural, and in fact even unjustifiable. How is the bank, in fact, incurring any risk at all if it's loaning depositors money into circulation? That's a great question. Austrian economics and mathematically perfected economy are in perfect agreement on that point. What I'm getting at is that it's only a few further steps from this, that's how narrow the abyss is between us, to realize that, well, wait a minute. If they can't lend depositors money, how could they create money justly by issuing no more than a representation of our promissory obligations to each other? It's the very next question we should have. So I'm encouraged, terribly encouraged by this dialogue, that there is common ground for those at the top of Austrian economics to recognize that, well, this further question exists too. Because if the money didn't even exist before, and of course all money has to come into creation this way, according to the obfuscation which is imposed by the purported banking system, but if money doesn't even exist before, and if the banking system gives up no lawful consideration whatsoever, commensurable to the debts it falsifies to itself, how can it claim that interest is justified on a mere act of publishing representations of our promissory obligations either? So this position of Rothbard that Robert Murphy has just raised here is an incredibly close observation of fact that Rothbard has been advocating for however long as well, which illustrates that in fact Austrian economics is very close to unraveling the same improprieties in the creation of money as well. That's an interesting point, because I would happen to agree with Rothbard that that's wrong, and I would also then tend from having an objection to that, which is obviously wrong, because if the bank is loaning someone else's money and is pretending that it's incurring risk and is charging interest for its own income, this wouldn't be justifiable. In other words, that interest belongs to the people whose money was lent, maybe with some share of it going to the banking system, but with the risk being that of the deposit holder. Therefore, I would say the lion's share would probably go to the deposit holder, although that isn't the way things are necessarily figured. And I would also say it might be an understanding that that's pretty much what goes on, because we are being paid some interest for our deposits. So, while it might be claimed that that's what's going on, in other words, still, to understand all this, we'd have to go down to the very